Welcome, gentle listener. You are safe here. The day is complete. There is nowhere you need to go, and nothing you need to decide right now. You may allow your body to rest. You may let your breathing slow. And if your thoughts begin to wander, you do not need to follow them. This is a place for ancient stories told softly, for myths remembered without urgency, for legends that move like the sea, slowly, rhythmically, without demand. If this space brings you comfort, you are warmly invited to subscribe to the channel. It helps these quiet stories continue, and it keeps this place open for future nights. You may also leave a like if this story brings you calm, or write a comment to let me know which myth, legend, or forgotten world you would like to visit next. Now, allow everything else to fade. Tonight, we return to an ancient story, a legend born from the sea itself. This is the story of Aphrodite. Chapter 1. Before Aphrodite, the world without gentle love. Before Aphrodite existed, the world was already ancient. Time had begun, yet it had not learned patience. Creation had taken shape, yet it had not learned tenderness. The universe moved forward, driven by power rather than care. The sky stretched endlessly above the earth, vast and heavy with stars. It carried thunder and silence with equal indifference. Below it, the land rose sharply, its mountains strong and unmoving, their stone bodies still, unfamiliar with softness. Valleys were deep shadows, long, and the air often carried the weight of unspoken tension. The sea, older than all memory, lay between them. It moved constantly, yet without urgency. Its waves did not rush toward purpose. They rolled and returned again and again, as if rehearsing something not yet ready to be spoken. The sea had witnessed the earliest moments of creation, the first separations, the first violences that shaped the world into form. In those days, the gods ruled everything. They were immense, radiant, and unchallenged. Their power was absolute. Their wills shaped the movement of the heavens and the trembling of the earth. Storms answered their anger. Fire obeyed their command. Fate itself bent beneath their decisions. But the gods were not gentle. They knew desire, but not intimacy. They knew union, but not closeness. They knew possession, but not care. Love existed only as force. It surged suddenly, overwhelming both gods and mortals alike. It took without asking. It burned without warming. It consumed and moved on, leaving echoes rather than connection. When gods desired, the world trembled. When mortals desired, they suffered, often without knowing why. There was no presence to soften longing, no hand to guide desire into rest, no goddess to teach love how to remain. And so the world continued, powerful yet incomplete. Mortals walked the earth, still new to their own bodies. They felt attraction like a pull in the chest, a tightening of breath, a heat that rose unexpectedly. They reached for one another without understanding what they sought. They formed bonds that were fragile, easily broken by fear, pride, or the will of the gods above them. Beauty appeared in fragments, in the curve of a shoreline at dawn, in the way light rested briefly on skin, in the quiet stillness between two breaths. But beauty had no home. It passed through the world like a visitor, leaving longing behind it. The gods themselves were unsettled by this absence, though few would admit it. Power without softness begins to collapse inward. Strength without balance becomes brittle. Even Zeus, ruler of thunder and law, sensed that something essential had not yet entered the world. And the sea listened. The sea always listened. It listened to the cries of mortals carried by the wind. It listened to the disputes of the gods echoing through the sky. It listened to the rhythm of the earth shifting beneath its depths. The sea held memory differently than the land. Where the earth stored scars, the sea dissolved them. Where the sky scattered storms, the sea absorbed their aftermath. Everything that fell into the water was changed, reshaped, remembered in a deeper way. Long before Aphrodite was born, the sea had already begun to gather what the world could not yet hold. It gathered warmth. It gathered longing. It gathered the unspoken desire for closeness that echoed through gods and mortals alike. The sea did not hurry. It waited. Time passed in vast, Uncounted measures, generations of mortals lived and vanished. Gods rose in prominence and faded into quieter roles. The world expanded outward, but something within it remained unresolved, like a breath held too long. Then came the violence that would change everything. Power clashed with power. Authority resisted authority. The sky itself was shaken by ancient conflict, by acts that tore through the structure of the divine order. What followed was not creation, but consequence. Fragments of divine force fell into the sea, not gently, not intentionally, but inevitably. The water received them all. It received what was broken. It received what was severed. It received what could no longer remain in the sky. And as it always did, the sea began to transform what it held. Foam appeared where the water met divine residue. White, luminous, endlessly forming and dissolving. It shimmered not with violence, but with quiet intensity. Something within it was changing, warming, becoming aware. The sea, ancient and patient, recognized this moment. It recognized the need that had existed since the beginning of time. It recognized the absence that had shaped longing into suffering. It recognized that power alone could not sustain the world forever. Within the foam, presence gathered. Not a thought yet, not a body yet, but intention. The sea shaped it slowly, carefully, without force. It rocked it in endless motion, allowing it to grow without fracture. This was not a birth born of pain or urgency. This was emergence. The world above remained unaware. The gods continued their rule. Mortals continued their restless seeking. The sky thundered. The land endured. But beneath the surface of the water, something entirely new was preparing to rise. Not a weapon, not a ruler, not a force of domination, but something far more dangerous. Something that could soften even the hardest will. Something that could bind without chains. Something that could remain. The sea held this presence close, as if shielding it from the world until the moment was right. It wrapped it in rhythm, in warmth, in endless repetition. Wave after wave, breath after breath, the presence grew more distinct. And though no name yet existed for her, the world was already beginning to change. Longing slowed, desire deepened, beauty lingered a moment longer than before. The gods felt at first an unfamiliar sensation, subtle but undeniable, a hesitation before command, a warmth where there had once been only heat, a pull not toward conquest, but toward closeness. Zeus felt it in the pause before thunder. Poseidon felt it in the way the sea no longer raged without reason. Even Ares, god of war, felt an unfamiliar stillness settle briefly in his chest. Something was coming, not to overthrow them, not to challenge their power, but to change the way power itself was experienced. And far below, within the endless motion of the sea, Aphrodite waited, not impatient, not afraid, but complete even before her first breath. Chapter 2. The Sea Foam and the Birth of the Goddess. The sea had been preparing for this moment longer than memory could hold. It did not announce what was coming. It did not disturb the surface with sudden signs. It simply continued its endless movement, wave after wave, breath after breath, holding within itself a presence that was no longer only potential. The divine fragments that had fallen into the water had long since lost their sharpness. Power, once violent and unresolved, had been softened by salt and time. What remained was essence stripped of command, stripped of force, reduced to something closer to truth. The sea accepted it all. It dissolved what could not remain whole. It reshaped what had been broken. It carried forward what the world still needed. White foam gathered where the depths met the open water. It formed slowly, thickening without urgency, glowing faintly beneath the shifting light of the sky. The foam did not remain still. It expanded and contracted, breathing with a rhythm that felt almost deliberate. Within it, warmth began to spread, not heat, but something gentler. Not pressure, but presence. The foam curved inward upon itself, folding and unfolding like a living thing. It carried memory without pain, power without violence. The sea rocked it endlessly, as if teaching it the first lesson of existence, how to move without resistance. The world above continued unaware. The sky shifted from night to dawn and back again. Clouds passed. Stars faded and returned. Time moved forward in its vast, unmeasured way. But within the foam, time no longer rushed. It slowed, thickened, softened. Form began to emerge. At first, it was indistinct, a suggestion rather than a shape, a curve of light, a gathering of warmth. The sea did not force definition upon it. It allowed the presence to become itself. Gradually, the shape grew clearer. Limbs formed, not by division, but by unfolding. Contours appeared as if remembered rather than created. The body emerged whole, complete, untouched by struggle. This was not a birth shaped by pain. There was no tearing, no cry, no rupture. There was only emergence. The foam parted gently, releasing what it had carried so carefully. From within it rose a figure, luminous and calm, as if she had always existed just beneath the surface of the world. Aphrodite. She did not gasp for breath. She did not reach outward in fear. She rose as one who already belonged. Her body glowed softly, reflecting the light of the sky without blinding it. Her skin held the warmth of the sea, the gentleness of its motion. Every line of her form carried balance, not perfection imposed, but harmony revealed. When she touched the water, the sea did not resist. It welcomed her. The surface curved upward beneath her feet, holding her weight with ease. Where she stood, the waves smoothed, losing their restlessness. Foam drifted outward in pale rings, dissolving slowly into the surrounding water. The sea recognized her. It had shaped her from its own depths, and now it responded to her presence as if responding to itself. Movement slowed. The endless rhythm softened further, becoming almost tender. Aphrodite stood in silence. She did not yet know words. She did not yet know names, but she knew sensation. She felt the warmth of the sun on her skin, the coolness of the breeze moving across her shoulders, the gentle lift and fall of the water beneath her feet. She felt no urgency to move, no need to claim space, no desire to command. Her presence alone was enough. The light around her changed subtly. It grew warmer, less harsh. Reflections on the water softened, becoming less fragmented. Even the horizon seemed to relax, its line less rigid than before. Desire stirred for the first time, without hunger. The sea itself seemed to linger around her, extending its waves just a little longer than before, as if unwilling to release her. Foam brushed against her ankles, dissolving slowly, reluctantly. The wind noticed her next. It approached cautiously, not as a force, but as a curiosity. It circled her form, lifting strands of her hair, tracing the outline of her body without touching. Where it passed, it lost its sharpness, becoming warmer, slower. The wind carried her scent, salt, warmth, something unfamiliar across the water. It traveled outward, reaching places far beyond the horizon. Though no eyes yet saw her, the world began to feel her. Mortals, sleeping on distant shores, stirred without waking. Their dreams shifted, becoming softer, more vivid. Gods upon Olympus paused briefly in their movements, sensing something new moving through the air. Aphrodite remained still. She was not waiting. She was being. The sea, feeling the approach of change, gathered its currents gently beneath her. It lifted her slightly, rocking her in a motion older than thought. The foam that had birthed her drifted away, dissolving into the water, its task complete. The sea had given what it had held for so long. Now, it prepared to carry her forward. Slow currents formed beneath the surface, guiding her without force. The wind aligned itself with the movement, becoming a quiet companion rather than a guide. Together, they began to move her across the water, toward land, toward a world that had never known gentleness as power, toward gods who ruled but did not yet understand love, toward mortals whose longing had never been answered. Aphrodite did not look back. She did not feel separation from the sea. She carried it within her. The rhythm of the waves remained in her breath. The memory of foam lingered in her warmth. The patience of the depths shaped her presence. As she drifted forward, the sea watched her go, not with loss, but with recognition. What it had shaped would never truly leave it. Love, once born, cannot be confined to a single place. The journey had begun, and with it, the slow transformation of the world itself. Chapter 3. Carried by the winds. The journey to Cyprus. The movement began so gently that it was almost imperceptible. Aphrodite did not decide to leave the sea. She was not summoned. She was not directed by command or desire. She was carried. The water beneath her shifted slowly, gathering itself into a steady, quiet current. It did not rush toward land. It moved as if following a memory, one older than direction, older than destination. The sea did not need to be told where to take her. It already knew. The wind, which had circled her cautiously, began to settle into rhythm with the water. It no longer moved in restless bursts. It softened, stretched itself into long, even breaths, flowing around her body without pressure. Together, sea and wind formed a passage. Aphrodite remained standing upon the water, her posture effortless, her presence unguarded. She did not brace herself against motion. She allowed herself to be moved, trusting the balance that held her. The horizon shifted slowly. At first, it was only a change in color, the faintest suggestion of land far beyond sight. The blue of the sea deepened, darkened, then softened again as light moved across its surface. The sky above mirrored the water below, cloud and reflection blurring into one another. Time stretched. Moments did not separate themselves cleanly. One wave dissolved into the next. One breath followed another without urgency. The journey did not measure itself in distance, but in continuity. Aphrodite observed the world quietly as it passed around her. She felt the temperature of the air change as currents shifted. She felt the subtle pull of gravity as the sea rose and fell beneath her. She felt the wind trace the outline of her form, learning her shape as it moved. These sensations did not overwhelm her. They settled into her, becoming part of her awareness, shaping her understanding of the world she was entering. She was not learning through instruction. She was learning through presence. Far beneath the surface, the depths stirred. Creatures of the sea, ancient and silent, moved in her wake. They did not approach her directly. They followed at a distance, drawn not by hunger or fear, but by recognition. The water itself felt different around her, warmer, calmer, more coherent. Schools of fish shifted their paths without panic. The great shapes of the deep slowed their movement. Even the currents hesitated, as if listening. The sea was changing as it carried her. Not dramatically, not violently, but permanently. As Aphrodite drifted closer to land, the wind grew more attentive. It lifted strands of her hair, guiding them gently back from her face. It brushed against her shoulders, her arms, her back, not to claim her attention, but to acknowledge her presence. The wind had never known restraint before. It tore through valleys, shattered trees, scattered storms without reflection. Now, it learned something new. It learned how to touch without taking, how to move without disturbing, how to remain. The land began to emerge slowly from the horizon. At first, it appeared only as shadow, a darkening line where sea met sky. As the current carried her closer, shapes formed, low hills, rocky outcrops, pale stretches of sand catching the light. This was Cyprus. The island rested quietly upon the water, its contours softened by distance. It did not rise sharply from the sea like a challenge. It seemed to receive the waves rather than resist them. Aphrodite felt the shift immediately. The water beneath her grew shallower, its movement slower. The scent of the air changed, carrying warmth from stone and earth. The sound of the waves altered, gaining texture as they met the shoreline. She did not feel anticipation. She felt recognition. The island did not yet know her name, but it was already prepared for her. The land had been shaped by the same forces that had shaped her wind, water, time, and patience. As she approached the shore, the current eased, lowering her gently. The water no longer lifted her forward. It allowed her to slow, to arrive without impact. The foam returned briefly, pale and delicate, gathering around her ankles as she stepped from the sea. It clung to her skin for a moment longer than necessary, as if reluctant to let her go, before dissolving into the sand. Aphrodite stood upon land for the first time. The earth beneath her feet felt solid, warm, steady. It did not shift like water. It did not yield entirely. It held her with quiet certainty. The wind settled. The sea rested. The island grew still. Nothing dramatic happened. No thunder, no proclamation. The world did not yet celebrate her arrival. But something subtle changed. Flowers, not yet visible, began to prepare beneath the soil. The air softened further, carrying warmth deeper into the land. The light resting upon the island grew richer, more generous. Aphrodite did not move immediately. She stood quietly, feeling the difference between sea and land, between movement and stillness. She allowed the sensations to settle into her, becoming part of her understanding. She was no longer only of the sea. She was now of the world. Behind her, the water continued its endless motion, unchanged in form, yet altered in essence. The sea did not withdraw from her. It remained present, breathing at the edge of the shore, reminding her of where she had come from. Ahead of her, the land waited. Cyprus did not rush to meet her. It did not demand her attention. It simply existed, open and ready. Aphrodite took her first step forward, not as a conqueror, not as a ruler, but as a presence entering gently into a world that had never known what to do with love. And though no gods yet stood before her, and no mortals yet raised their eyes to her form, the balance of the world had already shifted. The journey was complete. The awakening was about to begin. Chapter 4. The Horae and the First Adorning. The island did not speak when Aphrodite stepped upon it. Cyprus did not greet her with sound or movement. It did not rush forward to announce her arrival. The land remained quiet, grounded, breathing slowly beneath her feet. The air held warmth without heaviness. The light rested gently on stone and sand, as if learning how to remain. Aphrodite stood within that stillness, allowing the new sensations to settle. The earth felt different from the sea. It did not move with her. It did not carry her forward. It asked her to stand. She felt the weight of her body for the first time, not as burden, but as presence. The solidity beneath her feet anchored her awareness, drawing her attention inward. She felt herself fully, distinctly, without separation between form and being. And it was then that the Horae arrived. They did not appear suddenly. They did not step forward from nowhere. They emerged as if they had always been there. The air shifted slightly, growing more ordered, more attentive. The light softened further, losing its sharp edges. Time itself seemed to arrange its rhythm, settling into a gentle, predictable flow. The hoary goddesses of the seasons, of natural order, of the quiet passage of time, approached without haste. They were not young nor old. They did not radiate power. They carried no weapons, no symbols of command. Their presence was calm, balanced, inevitable. They had watched the world grow and change since its earliest days. They knew how things came into being not through force, but through patience. They understood rhythm, the necessity of unfolding rather than arrival. They recognized Aphrodite immediately, not as an intruder, not as a threat, but as something that had always belonged to the order they protected. Without speaking, they guided her forward. The land beneath them grew softer as they walked, transitioning from stone to grass, from sand to shaded ground. The sound of water returned, quieter now, filtered through reeds and smooth rock. A hidden spring revealed itself, clear and still, fed by underground streams that had been gathering long before this moment. The Horae led Aphrodite to the water. It was not the vast sea that had birthed her. It was not restless or deep. This water was contained, held, quiet. The surface reflected her image gently, without distortion. The light danced softly across it, forming pale patterns that shifted slowly with the movement of air. The Horae did not instruct her. They did not need to. Aphrodite stepped into the water, allowing it to rise around her ankles, her calves, her knees. The temperature was neither warm nor cold. It met her skin without contrast, accepting her as easily as the sea had done. She lowered herself into the spring, letting the water cradle her body. It flowed around her shoulders, her arms, her back, dissolving the salt of the sea without erasing its memory. The Horae watched quietly. This was not cleansing in the sense of removal. Nothing was taken from her. It was integration. The water of the land met the water of the sea within her, settling together, becoming one. The rhythm of waves softened into stillness. Motion gave way to presence. Aphrodite closed her eyes. For the first time, she allowed herself to rest fully within form. Time slowed further. The light shifted subtly, bending toward gold. Shadows lengthened, stretching gently across the ground. The air grew richer, carrying the scent of earth warmed by sun. When Aphrodite rose from the water, droplets clung briefly to her skin before falling away, leaving a faint shimmer behind. Her body glowed not with brilliance, but with quiet completeness. This was the moment the Horae had been waiting for. They stepped forward together, moving with synchronized ease. Their hands carried objects formed not by craft, but by time itself, fabric woven from softness, colors drawn from dawn and dusk, ornaments shaped by natural curves rather than sharp edges. They did not dress her to conceal. They dressed her to reveal. Each movement was deliberate, reverent. Fabric rested against her skin without constraint, following the natural lines of her body rather than imposing shape upon it. The garments did not signal status or authority. They expressed harmony. Gold touched her lightly, not heavy, not rigid. It reflected light rather than capturing it. The metal did not weigh her down. It warmed quickly against her skin, becoming part of her presence rather than something worn. Flowers appeared at her feet as the Horae worked, not suddenly, not explosively. They unfolded slowly, as if responding to an invitation that had always existed beneath the soil. Petals opened one by one, releasing fragrance into the air. Color spread gently across the ground, softening the landscape without overwhelming it. The Horae adorned her hair last. They did not bind it tightly. They did not restrain it. They allowed it to fall naturally, guiding it only enough to frame her face. Light caught in its movement, tracing subtle highlights as she shifted. When they stepped back, their task complete, they did not admire their work. They observed. Aphrodite stood transformed, not changed in essence, but expressed fully for the first time. Beauty was no longer fragmented. It had taken residence. This was not beauty as possession, not beauty as demand, not beauty as spectacle. This was beauty as balance. As Aphrodite took her first step forward from the spring, the world responded. Flowers spread further across the land, filling spaces that had once remained bare. The air thickened with warmth and scent. The light lingered longer upon surfaces, reluctant to move on. The Horae did not follow her. They had fulfilled their role. Their presence receded quietly into the rhythm of the island, becoming once again indistinguishable from the flow of time itself. Seasons resumed their passage, now altered subtly by what had been introduced into the world. Aphrodite stood alone again, but the solitude felt different now. She was not simply present. She was visible, not yet to gods, not yet to mortals, but to the world itself. The island held her gently, as if recognizing the significance of what had just occurred. Cyprus did not claim her. It offered itself as witness. Ahead of her, the path toward Olympus remained unseen, unmarked. Behind her, the sea continued its endless breathing, and within her, something new had settled. Not desire, not intention, but readiness. The world had been prepared. Now, it was time for the gods to see what had entered their realm. Chapter 5. Aphrodite, among the gods of Olympus. The path to Olympus did not reveal itself all at once. There was no road marked in stone, no clear ascent drawn across the land. The journey upward unfolded gradually, almost imperceptibly, as if the world itself were rearranging its layers to allow her passage. Aphrodite did not climb with effort. She did not strain against the earth. She moved as one moves within a dream, carried not by intention, but by inevitability. The air grew thinner, clearer, more resonant. Sounds softened, as though absorbed by height. The light shifted again, losing the warmth of the island and taking on a pale, steady brilliance. Clouds drifted lower, brushing gently against her shoulders as she passed through them. She did not part them. They parted for her. Olympus revealed itself, not as a fortress, but as a presence. It rose above the world, vast and unmoving, suspended between sky and earth. Its peaks caught the light constantly, reflecting it outward in slow, steady waves. The air round it felt charged, not with tension, but with watchfulness. The gods were already there. They did not gather suddenly. They did not announce themselves. They had always been present, each within their own domain, their own rhythm. But as Aphrodite approached, something shifted among them. Movements slowed, Conversations paused mid-thought. Power, accustomed to moving outward without resistance, hesitated. The first to notice her did not speak. Hera felt it as a tightening beneath her calm. Athena sensed it as a disturbance in pattern. Apollo felt it as a change in the way light responded to his presence. Even Zeus, seated at the heart of Olympus, paused. He did not yet see her clearly, but he felt the alteration in balance. Aphrodite entered Olympus without announcement. She did not cross a threshold marked by gates or guards. She stepped into the realm of the gods as naturally as she had stepped from sea to land. The ground beneath her feet was smooth, unyielding, formed of stone shaped by divine will. The space around her responded immediately. Columns seemed to draw closer, their shadows softening. The air thickened slightly, carrying warmth where there had been only clarity. Light, which had always obeyed Apollo, hesitated briefly, bending around her form as if uncertain where to rest. The gods turned toward her, one by one. They did not recognize her at first, not by name, not by role. They saw only presence. She stood among them without fear, without challenge. She did not bow. She did not assert herself. Her posture carried neither submission nor dominance. She occupied space fully, effortlessly, and that unsettled them. The gods were accustomed to power that announced itself. Thunder, fire, war, wisdom sharpened into strategy. Aphrodite carried none of these. Yet something about her made even the strongest among them still. Ares felt it as a loosening of his constant readiness for conflict. His grip on aggression softened, not into weakness, but into uncertainty. For the first time, he did not know whether to advance or retreat. Athena observed carefully, her mind searching for structure, for explanation. She found none. Aphrodite did not fit into existing order. She was not a force that could be anticipated. Hera studied her silently, measuring not threat, but influence. She felt the subtle shift in authority that does not arrive through challenge, but through attraction. Apollo, radiant and precise, felt his light alter as it reflected from her. It did not outshine her. It did not diminish her. It simply changed, becoming warmer, more diffuse. And Zeus watched. He felt the weight of her presence settle into Olympus like a new constant. Not a surge, not a wave, but something that would remain. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence stretched, dense and unfamiliar. Olympus had known many silences, but this one carried no tension. It carried attention. Aphrodite did not fill the silence. She allowed it to exist. She did not seek recognition. She did not request a place. She simply was. It was Hermes who moved first. He approached her slowly, curiosity guiding his steps more than duty. His usual quickness softened as he drew near. His gaze lingered, not with desire, but with wonder. "Who are you?" he asked, not as challenge, but as invitation. Aphrodite met his eyes. When she spoke, her voice did not echo. It did not command the space. It settled into it. "I am what has been missing," she said quietly. The words did not declare authority. They named absence. The gods felt it immediately. Memories surfaced, moments of desire without fulfillment, of union without closeness, of power without rest. They recognized the truth of her words, not intellectually, but viscerally. Zeus rose, not abruptly, not defensively. He stood as one who understands the arrival of something that cannot be refused. "You have come from the sea," he said, not as question. Aphrodite inclined her head slightly. "I carry it with me," she replied. Zeus studied her, measuring not strength, but consequence. He saw no ambition in her, no hunger for rule. Yet he sensed that her presence would reshape the world in ways no decree could prevent. "You will have a place here," he said at last. It was not an offer. It was acknowledgement. The gods accepted it without protest. Not because they were commanded to, but because resistance felt irrelevant. As Aphrodite took her place among them, Olympus adjusted, not dramatically, not visibly, but permanently. Desire softened, rivalries dulled, power found a counterbalance it had never known. Aphrodite did not sit upon a throne. She did not claim dominion. She remained standing, present, allowing the gods to feel what her presence meant. Love had entered Olympus, not as romance, not as chaos, but as gravity, and nothing would move the same way again. Chapter 6. Love as power, not war. After Aphrodite took her place among the gods, Olympus did not erupt into celebration. There were no feasts held in her honor, no hymns sung to announce her arrival, no immediate reordering of titles or domains. Instead, there was adjustment, a slow, subtle recalibration of forces that had existed unchanged since the beginning of divine memory. The gods continued their roles, but something within those roles shifted, like weight redistributing itself without sound. Aphrodite did not intervene. She did not instruct the gods how to feel. She did not demand devotion. She did not claim authority over desire. She simply remained present. And presence, it became clear, was enough. Love had always existed among the gods, but it had never been sovereign. It appeared in flashes, sudden attractions, brief unions, moments of indulgence followed by distance. Desire took and moved on. Bonds formed and dissolved without consequence. Now, something different entered the current. Aphrodite's presence did not provoke urgency. It did not sharpen longing into hunger. It did not push the gods toward action. It slowed them. Ares felt it most sharply. The god of war had always known motion advance. Strike, retreat, repeat. Conflict gave him shape. Without it, his energy scattered, restless and unfocused. In Aphrodite's presence, that restlessness softened, not into weakness, but into pause. He found himself hesitating before aggression, sensing an unfamiliar alternative that did not involve conquest. The impulse to dominate loosened, replaced by a strange awareness of closeness, of proximity without violence. This unsettled him more than any enemy ever had. Athena observed the change with concern. Wisdom relied on clarity, on discernible cause and effect. Aphrodite introduced neither. Her influence did not follow strategy. It could not be anticipated or contained. It did not respond to logic. Athena sensed that love, in this new form, did not oppose reason, but it did not obey it either. Hera felt something else entirely. She understood bonds. She understood union and loyalty and the cost of permanence. In Aphrodite, she recognized a force that could create attachment without contract, devotion without obligation. This threatened the structures Hera had long upheld. Marriage, alliance, lineage, all could be softened, reshaped, loosened by a presence that did not require vows. Apollo, god of light and order, noticed how illumination changed around Aphrodite. Light no longer exposed, only clarity and truth. It began to reveal warmth, nuance, the subtle beauty of imperfection. Shadows were no longer merely absence. They gained texture, depth, invitation. Even Hermes, ever moving, found his steps slowing in her vicinity. Messages lingered. Words took on tone, meaning stretched beyond function. And Zeus watched them all. He had ruled through balance of force, thunder to command, law to bind, fate to structure the world. He understood power that acted outward, that imposed itself upon reality. Aphrodite's power did neither. It did not compel. It did not conquer. It did not punish. It attracted, and that made it dangerous. Attraction cannot be ordered. It cannot be resisted directly. It reshapes behavior without announcing intent. Zeus sensed that love, embodied as Aphrodite, did not seek dominion, yet it would influence every domain. War would no longer be pure aggression. Wisdom would no longer be detached. Rule would no longer be untouched by desire. For the first time, Zeus encountered a power he could not command without diminishing himself. He did not confront her. He did not challenge her authority. Instead, he acknowledged her indirectly, granting her space, allowing her presence to settle into Olympus without interference. This was not surrender. It was recognition of inevitability. Love did not need permission to exist. It only needed to be. Aphrodite moved among the gods quietly. She listened more than she spoke. She observed more than she acted. When she did speak, her words did not instruct. They reflected. She spoke of closeness without possession, of desire without urgency, of union without erasure. The gods began to feel longing differently. It was no longer only a spark demanding satisfaction. It became something that lingered, that deepened with time, that invited stillness rather than action. This unsettled the rhythms of Olympus. Feasts lasted longer. Arguments lost their sharpness. Silences grew more frequent and more comfortable. Power, accustomed to constant assertion, began to rest. Love, it became clear, was not the opposite of strength. It was its counterweight. Aphrodite did not seek to replace war, wisdom, or rule. She did not dissolve them. She softened their edges, preventing them from turning inward and collapsing under their own rigidity. In her presence, extremes moderated. Conflict did not vanish, but it slowed. Desire did not disappear, but it deepened. Authority did not weaken, but it learned restraint. The gods began to understand something the world had never known. That power without love exhausts itself. That strength without tenderness fractures. That eternity without connection becomes empty. Aphrodite offered none of this as doctrine. She offered it as atmosphere, and atmosphere changes everything. Olympus, once defined by hierarchy and force, began to feel something closer to balance. Not peace, but coherence. Not harmony, but possibility. Even Zeus, watching from his throne, felt it. In the pause before thunder, in the hesitation before decree, in the awareness that some things could not be ruled, only allowed. Love had entered the structure of the cosmos, not as chaos, not as weakness, but as a quiet, enduring power. And from Olympus, its influence would soon move outward toward mortals, toward the fragile hearts that had always known longing, but had never known how to hold it. Chapter 7. Aphrodite and Mortal Desire. When Aphrodite turned her attention toward mortals, she did not descend with ceremony. There were no signs in the sky, no omens carved into stone, no voices carried on the wind to announce her approach. She moved as desire itself moves quietly, unexpectedly, without explanation. Mortals had always known longing, but they had never understood it. It arrived without warning, settled into the body, disrupted sleep and thought, and left confusion in its wake. They felt drawn toward one another, without knowing why. They sought closeness, and often mistook it for possession, mistook heat for intimacy, mistook union for completion. Before Aphrodite, desire was hunger. It took and retreated. It burned and faded. It left absence where it had passed. Aphrodite did not remove this longing from mortals. She transformed it. She moved among them, not as a goddess demanding worship, but as a presence-altering perception. She was seen sometimes as a stranger on the road, sometimes as a woman resting near water, sometimes as a warmth that lingered in the air after another had passed. Rarely did she reveal herself fully. She did not need to. Her influence settled into bodies before it reached minds. Mortals began to feel their own forms differently. The body was no longer only a vessel for labor or survival. It became a place of sensation, of memory, of meaning. Skin learned to listen. Breath learned to slow. Touch began to carry intention rather than urgency. Shame loosened its grip. Not all at once, not completely, but enough. Desire no longer arrived, only as disruption. It became invitation, a call not to consume, but to approach, to remain, to notice. Aphrodite watched quietly as mortals encountered this shift. She observed lovers who lingered in one another's presence after union, uncertain why they did not wish to leave. She observed hands that traced skin without seeking conquest. She observed gazes that rested rather than claimed. Love began to gather memory. Before, desire vanished once satisfied. Now, it left behind a trace, a warmth remembered, a closeness recalled long after bodies parted. Mortals began to carry one another within themselves. This frightened some of them. Love that remains is more dangerous than love that passes. It creates vulnerability. It introduces loss. It demands presence. Aphrodite did not protect mortals from this. She did not soften love into comfort. She did not remove its risks. She allowed love to be real. She watched as mortals learned that desire was not always meant to be resolved, that longing could exist without fulfillment, that closeness could deepen even without possession. Some resisted. They clung to the old patterns, taking without staying, burning without warmth. Aphrodite did not punish them. She did not withdraw her presence. She allowed them to experience the emptiness that followed. Others learned slowly. They discovered that love asked for attention, not urgency, that bodies spoke in subtle languages, that intimacy required listening as much as action. Aphrodite moved through villages and cities unseen, leaving small alterations in her wake. Arguments softened into conversation. Glances lingered longer than before. Moments stretched, thick with unspoken feeling. She did not erase suffering. Love still hurt. Loss still arrived. Mortality still claimed every bond in time. But love gained weight. It mattered. Mortals began to understand that love was not a reward for virtue, nor a prize granted by the gods. It was an experience, fleeting, profound, sometimes unbearable, that shaped them precisely because it could not last. Aphrodite understood this better than any god. She knew that immortality insulated the gods from the full cost of love. Mortals paid that cost with their bodies, with time, with grief, and yet they were the ones who experienced love most completely. She did not envy them. She honored them. She watched a mortal woman wait at dusk for a lover who might not return, feeling both hope and acceptance settle into her chest. She watched a man hold another's hand, not to claim, but to reassure. She watched lovers part at dawn, carrying one another forward in memory rather than possession. These moments mattered. They shaped the world as much as any divine decree. Aphrodite did not linger in any one place for long. She did not bind mortals to her. She allowed love to be theirs. She left behind no temples at first, no rituals, no names spoken aloud, only experience. And as mortals carried these experiences forward, the world itself began to change. Songs grew slower, more intimate. Stories gained nuance, complexity. Beauty was no longer only admired, it was felt. Aphrodite returned often to the edges of the world, to shorelines, to quiet springs, to places where land and water met. She stood there sometimes, watching the sea that had birthed her, carrying within her the knowledge that love, once introduced, could never be removed. Not from gods, not from mortals. Love had entered the human body, not as promise, not as salvation, but as truth. And the world, fragile and luminous, would never be the same. Chapter 8. The Binding of the Goddess. The gods began to grow uneasy, not because Aphrodite challenged them, not because she demanded worship or authority, but because she did neither. Her influence spread without effort, without declaration. It moved through Olympus and the mortal world alike, altering the way desire unfolded, the way bonds formed, the way power was felt. Love no longer behaved predictably. It did not arrive only in moments of excess or indulgence. It lingered, it deepened, it complicated. This unsettled the gods. They were accustomed to forces that could be named, placed, governed. Even chaos had its patterns. Even war followed rhythms. Aphrodite's presence, however, did not submit to structure. It did not escalate. It did not resolve. It remained. Zeus observed this carefully. He watched how the gods shifted around her, how their certainty softened, how their impulses slowed. He felt it himself, the pause before decision, the hesitation before command. Love did not weaken his rule, but it altered its texture. Authority no longer felt absolute. It felt responsive. This was dangerous, not because love opposed rule, but because it refused to be ruled. The gods began to speak quietly among themselves, not openly, not in council, in glances held too long, in silences that stretched after Aphrodite passed, in the subtle discomfort of not knowing how to respond. They asked themselves how a force so pervasive could be contained, not destroyed. That was unthinkable. Not resisted, that proved impossible. Contained. They turned to a familiar solution. Marriage. Marriage had long been a tool of order among gods and mortals alike. It bound forces together, assigned roles, created expectations. It transformed desire into structure, impulse into agreement. It made relationships legible. Zeus decided that Aphrodite, too, must be bound, not as punishment, not as humiliation, as stabilization. He chose Hephaestus, the god of fire and craft, of forge and labor. He was steady, patient, skilled with his hands. He knew how to shape raw material into form, how to bind heat into usefulness. He did not carry the restless intensity of Ares, nor the cold clarity of Apollo. He was reliable. Aphrodite did not resist the decision. She did not protest. She did not plead. She did not withdraw. She accepted the arrangement without visible reaction. This confused the gods even more. They expected anger, or grief, or at least reluctance. But Aphrodite's calm unsettled them far more than defiance would have. The marriage took place without grandeur. No great celebration, no cosmic upheaval. It was formal, efficient, orderly. Hephaestus approached the bond with sincerity. He offered skill, dedication, loyalty. He did not seek to possess Aphrodite. He did not attempt to diminish her presence. He believed, perhaps, that structure itself could hold love safely. Aphrodite allowed the bond to exist, but it did not contain her. Marriage, she demonstrated quietly, could define roles, but not desire. It could assign proximity, but not closeness. It could bind bodies, but not attention. Love did not obey contracts. The gods watched as the arrangement failed to produce the expected result. Aphrodite remained unchanged. Her presence continued to move freely through Olympus and the world below. Desire still flowed where it would. Attraction still gathered without permission. Ares felt it sharply. His pull toward Aphrodite intensified, not as conquest, but as recognition. Where war had always driven him outward, love drew him inward. Their connection, raw and undeniable, did not submit to structure. It existed outside of agreement, outside of order. This alarmed the gods further, not because of betrayal, but because it revealed a truth they wished to ignore. Love could not be assigned. It could not be regulated. It could not be secured through form alone. Zeus understood then that his attempt had failed, not because Aphrodite defied him, but because love itself refused containment. Marriage, law, decree, all could coexist with love, but none could command it. Aphrodite did not mock this failure. She did not exploit it. She simply allowed it to be seen. In doing so, she revealed something uncomfortable to gods and mortals alike. That love is not an object to be owned, nor a state to be guaranteed. It is movement. It is attention. It is presence that must be renewed again and again. The gods learned this reluctantly. Some resisted still, clinging to structure, to hierarchy, to control. Others began to accept that love, once introduced into the cosmos, would always exceed their designs. Aphrodite remained among them, unbound in all the ways that mattered. She honored form where it supported connection. She ignored it where it attempted domination. And slowly, the gods adjusted. They learned that love could not be locked away without impoverishing the world. That desire, when constrained too tightly, withered rather than obeyed. That beauty demanded freedom in order to remain alive. The attempt to bind the goddess had failed. But in that failure, the world learned something essential. That love is strongest, not when held, but when allowed. And from that understanding, a quieter, deeper influence began to spread. One that did not seek expression through drama or conflict. One that simply remained. Chapter 9. The Quiet Power of Desire. As time passed, Aphrodite ceased to be experienced as an arrival. She no longer felt like a presence that had entered the world. She became something that existed within it, woven into the air, the light, the spaces between movement and rest. Love stopped announcing itself. It did not arrive with intensity or urgency. It did not demand attention. It waited. Desire, under Aphrodite's influence, grew quieter. It no longer surged only at moments of excess or absence. It began to exist as a constant undercurrent, a gentle pull that shaped behavior without forcing it. Mortals and gods alike felt this shift. They began to notice how longing could arise without discomfort, how attraction could exist without immediate need for resolution, how closeness could deepen simply by remaining. This was unfamiliar. The world had long equated desire with action. To want was to reach, to feel was to move, to be drawn was to respond. Aphrodite revealed another possibility. That desire could be a state rather than an impulse. That longing could be held rather than discharged. That attraction could exist without consumption. She did this not through instruction, but through atmosphere. Where she passed, moments stretched, conversations slowed, silences grew dense and meaningful rather than awkward. Presence became something felt rather than asserted. People lingered. They remained near one another longer than necessary. They listened without preparing response. They allowed warmth to exist without naming it. This unsettled those accustomed to clarity and outcome. Desire without direction feels dangerous to those who seek control. It cannot be predicted. It does not resolve neatly. It invites vulnerability without promising safety. Aphrodite did not offer reassurance. She allowed the discomfort to exist. In doing so, she revealed that desire, when unhurried, does not destroy. It deepens awareness. It invites attention. It teaches patience. The gods experienced this shift in subtle ways. Apollo's music slowed, allowing notes to linger into one another. Athena found that insight arrived not only through analysis, but through stillness. Even Ares, restless and reactive, discovered moments where the urge to act dissolved into simple awareness. Zeus felt it most deeply in the spaces between decisions. He found that some decrees no longer felt necessary, that the world did not collapse when he waited, that authority could exist without constant assertion. Aphrodite did not diminish power. She revealed its quieter form. She showed that influence does not always announce itself, that transformation can occur without spectacle, that the most enduring changes often move unnoticed. Among mortals, desire learned to breathe. Lovers discovered that closeness could exist without possession, that longing did not always require satisfaction, that intimacy could deepen in absence as much as in presence. This did not eliminate pain. Loss still arrived. Separation still hurt. Mortality still ended every bond. But desire gained dignity. It became something that could be carried rather than endured, something that shaped the inner landscape without overwhelming it, something that remained even after objects of desire had passed. Aphrodite watched this quietly. She did not intervene when longing went unanswered. She did not reward restraint or punish excess. She allowed desire to teach its own lessons. In this, she differed from every other god. She did not seek devotion through fear or favor. She did not bind followers through obligation. She did not offer salvation. She offered presence, and presence, it became clear, was transformative. Desire no longer felt like a force that disrupted life. It became a current that moved beneath it, shaping decisions subtly, guiding attention, deepening experience. The world grew slower, not inert, not passive, attentive. Beauty lingered longer on surfaces. Music resonated deeper in the body. Touch became more deliberate. Even solitude felt fuller, less empty. Aphrodite did not claim responsibility for these changes. She did not need to. She existed as a reminder that not everything meaningful must culminate in action, that wanting does not always require fulfillment, that love can exist as awareness, as openness, as readiness, as a state. The world, having learned this, began to rest into it. And in that rest, something ancient and fragile was preserved. The capacity to feel without needing to consume. The capacity to desire without needing to own. The capacity to love without needing to hold. Aphrodite remained present within that capacity, not as a figure to be worshipped, but as a condition of being alive, quiet, enduring, unfinished. Chapter 10. Returning Love to the Sea. In time, Aphrodite no longer needed to be seen. Her presence had settled so deeply into the world that it no longer required form. Love moved freely now, not always gently, not always kindly, but with depth, with consequence, with meaning. The sea continued its endless breathing. It had not changed in shape, nor in rhythm. Waves still rose and fell. Tides still pulled the moon into their quiet dialogue. But something within the water remembered what it had given. Aphrodite returned to the shore often. Not as departure, not as retreat, as return. She stood where land and water met, where motion softened into stillness. Foam brushed the sand and dissolved again. The horizon stretched open, unbroken, holding both beginning and ending without distinction. She did not look at the sea as one looks at an origin left behind. She looked at it as one looks at something always present. The sea had never ceased to be part of her. She carried its patience in her breath, its rhythm in her awareness, its depth in her stillness. The world no longer needed her arrival. Love had entered bodies, memories, gestures. It lived in pauses, in attention, in the willingness to remain with what was felt. It existed now beyond myth, beyond story, beyond the name that once defined it. Mortals continued to love. They did so imperfectly. They did so briefly. They did so knowing it would end. And still, they loved. Gods continued to rule. But their power no longer moved without awareness. Desire tempered force. Presence softened command. Even eternity learned restraint. Aphrodite did not claim credit. She had never sought authorship. She remained as condition rather than cause, as atmosphere rather than action, as reminder rather than rule. At the edge of the sea, she allowed herself to rest. The waves did not call her back. They did not pull her inward. They simply moved endlessly, faithfully, as they always had. Love, like the sea, did not need to be contained. It needed space. Space to move. Space to return. Space to remain unfinished. As night settled, the light softened further. The horizon blurred gently, losing its sharpness. The boundary between sky and water dissolved into quiet continuity. Aphrodite stood without urgency. She did not depart the world. She did not withdraw from it. She remained within it present, wherever desire slowed into awareness, wherever beauty lingered without demand, wherever closeness existed without possession. And slowly, the story itself began to loosen, not ending, not resolving, releasing, like a breath exhaled without effort, like a wave completing its motion and returning to the sea. The world continued. The sea continued. Love continued. And you, gentle listener, may rest now within that continuation, held by rhythm, carried by stillness, allowed to drift without needing to arrive